Hello and welcome to Spirit Sherpa, the show that helps and encourages you on your journey to unlock your magic mojo. I'm Joshua Radewan, your co-host, here as always with transformational shaman and coach to the stars, Kelle Sparta. What's going on, Kelle?
Well, I just finished the retreat. And
That's
so this is the
exciting.
first podcast we've done since the retreat. And in fact, the first podcast we've done in almost a month, maybe a month, because we took a couple weeks off from recording for the holidays. And so I get to see you again, Josh. I mean, I've seen you in program, obviously, but not much because you've been out integrating. And
Oh, I was just telling you before we jumped on that I see you in my third eye every time I'm talking to a client. So don't
little
spit your
details.
coffee
Yeah.
on.
Like,
But
so
yeah,
the
I know it's
retreat
been a
was
while.
awesome.
We've been kind of going in that little, yeah, we've been going in that little spurt lately with, podcasting for a while, getting some in the bank, and then integrating. Like I think we've both been on that integration path, like what we've talked about. So, working
Yeah.
with
Well,
working
and
with bear medicine.
you're having connectivity issues too with the walkabout and so on. So yeah. But yeah, bear
Absolutely.
medicine, you said?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like the hibernating stage. I know you said it's always summer in Panama, not so much in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we it's summer when it's winter there. But the locals call it summer when we're in dry season. So wind, also known as windy season. So it's really, really windy, which is lovely because,
Yeah.
we close up the house at night because, wow, there's so many dogs in my neighborhood. And they just go off and just bay. One of them goes off and 50 dogs are baying. And so, we close up the house at night so we don't get random dog alarms throughout the night.
I think
And so
I
getting
think
fresh air
that's
in
all.
the morning is good. So, yeah,
I
so
thought that was one of my favorite parts of Panama was the roving dog packs. There's a wolf totem. I was like, "Hello, my brothers." Like they just show up in a pack of six. Like they're, who are you? You know.
yeah, we saw one of those when we were in David, when we were dropping everybody off after the retreat. There was a pack of like 8 dogs wandering around David. They were all skinny, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would feel safe approaching that group of dogs. I'm like, maybe not so much. But yeah, up here in Boquete, thankfully, the dogs come in ones and twos. So that's not so bad. But yeah, in packs, they can be a little bit more challenging. But um, yeah, so the retreat was awesome. And we did some really cool stuff. So the thing about the Adventures in Energetics retreat is that I customize it to the people who are attending. And because of that, the retreat is very different from time to time, from one retreat to the next. And last time we did a bunch of rituals. And my intention for the retreat was to expose you guys to a bunch of rituals so that you would understand the different types and containers and the ways in which ritual operated and things like that. And then we did some education in between on different topics, right? And so I considered it to be sort of a sampler, right? But because I'm me and I can't help myself, every time I ran a ritual, it was tapped into exactly what the people at the retreat needed. And so therefore it became a very transformational event because we did ritual every day for like 6 days. And it became massively transformational for the people who attended because I just do that by intuition at this point. I just tap in. And so this time, there were 3 people who came, and because there were 3, I could do things differently, right? And so the retreat that we did ended up being a hybrid, right? So we did mostly we did the group stuff, and then we did a day where everybody got like an hour and a half to spend with me privately. And the reason that I did that is because I had the time to do it, right? Whereas if I'm working with a larger group, I have to do more things in the group dynamic. And this time, what I did was I taught them how to run a labyrinth ritual. And that labyrinth ritual, they ran on the next to last day of the retreat for a bunch of people that I had invited from the local area to come out and experience the retreat, the ritual, rather. And so what we did for the preparation time was to prepare them to run the ritual, to hold the space, to be able to stand in the archetype of whichever role they were in, whether they were at a gate at one of the two gates or whether they were the messenger, right? And then I held the open and closed space. So there were 4 people holding space within the ritual. And so that, we had to process through stuff that got in the way, right? So we had to help them be able to read the energy of the participant, to know whether or not they were ready for different things. We needed to give them permission to send the participants back if they weren't ready, and the strength to stand in that position, the ability to stand in the gateway. The gateway is probably the hardest role in a ritual to hold, because it is innocuously simple. Hold the gate. Don't let anything in that doesn't belong in, and don't let anything out before it's ready, right? Or anyone out before they're ready. And that's the goal of the gate. Well, except that, if something comes up and needs to be whacked over the nose, you have to have the power to be able to whack it over the nose and send it flying, right? Which we were inside my wards, so that was unlikely to happen. But one of the participants said she saw something coming up the outside of the fence, trying to get in. And she was like, "Oh, no, you have to go." No, like, yeah. So, but this is the sort of thing, right? And so we pay attention to these things, but they had to learn the different skills. And so, sometimes that involved getting over boundary setting, guilt, right? You can't be a soft no when you're standing a gate. You have to be a hard no when you're standing a gate, right? You have to be willing to be like, fuck off, no, not a, oh no, you can't come in. No, you can't do that. Then any softness, and they're going to test it, right? They're going to try and get in. And so, and that's true with participants too. You need to be solid in your yes and your no, or else it feels unsafe to the participants, right? So there was a whole lot of education around what it takes to hold space in a ritual setting and what it takes to do all this stuff. And so we had a lot of fun doing that. And then, they came out to karaoke with me and we sang karaoke. And of course, the song that they chose to sing was Let It Go, which tied into our overall theme for what happened during the retreat and things like that. And so we did, we did a cacao ceremony and a blessing ceremony, and we learned how to cast a circle with hands, and we did, well, God, we did so many things. Remembering everything. We also, one of my participants who came had requested that we do this during the Coffee and Flower Festival. And so we also attended the Coffee and Flower Festival. And so that was fun. That's a huge festival here in Boquete. 120,000 people descend on the town in 2 weeks. And the town, just for perspective, it depends on who you ask, but it's between 10 and 25,000 people when there's no festival. So, pretty much 5 times the number of people who live here descend on the town for that 2-week period. So it's a little crazy. In fact, the locals generally avoid town for those 2 weeks because we're like, no, thank you. And to make matters worse, they've taken out a bridge in the area, and so the only place to get around the festival is not there because you can't get all the way through. You have to go through on the main road. So traffic is abysmal this time. So, but they had a blast. We didn't have any rain this time, which you guys got a huge amount of rain last time, which
I think the only time it didn't rain is when we were singing Up the Sun. That was the only time it wasn't cloudy, you remember?
yeah. And I don't think we actually saw the sun. We finally gave up on it. We saw it lighten, but there were clouds in the sky, so we never actually saw this. We were like, yeah, it's up. We moved on. Because, there were so many clouds because there was a hurricane in the Caribbean when you guys were here last time. That was the most rain I've ever seen in 3.5 years of being here. You guys clearly needed some cleansing. So, but yeah, it was sunshiny basically the whole time they were here this time. So that was good. But yeah, let's talk about our topic. We've been sort of rambling on here. So, but this is a good point for our topic because the topic for today is the nervous system reset, right? And, the reason that I wanted to talk about the retreat is because retreats are a great way to reset your nervous system, right? Just getting out of your environment and getting into another space. And especially here in Boquete, because the energy here is so good, right? It's just so yummy. In fact, a couple of people, I think maybe all three of the people who came are actually thinking about moving here. One of them actually went and talked to a real estate agent. So, we're the energy here has a name. It's called Tranquilo, right? And it's just calming. And that's why it's so great to come to as a retreat, right? But pretty much if you get out of your environment and you go to a place that has decent energy, you're going to help your nervous system to reset because you're stepping out of your roles, you're stepping out of your doingness, right? Because when you're in do mode, your nervous system's in hyperactive, hyper aware, danger Will Robinson mode, right? I talk about do it mode all the time. And, most of my people are in do it mode 24/7. And so test this, guys. Are you in do it mode? If you're sitting still, are you thinking I should be doing something? That is do it mode. If that applies to you, then listen up. Do it mode is emergency mode. It is the mode that people go into when they're in an emergency situation and everything has to get handled right now. If you're in do it mode all the time, your nervous system is constantly in fight or flight or freeze. And that is not good for you. It shoots your cortisol levels off the charts. It makes you have hard time sleeping because you're just like spiking your adrenaline levels. It can lead to adrenal fatigue, which is really hard to get past. And there's all kinds of bad health consequences to being stressed out all the time. And I don't know about you, Josh, but I lived in do it mode for most of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, between that and, the spiritual warfare the last 9 years cycle and what that felt like. Absolutely. I think that's, that hits it right on the head. It's funny, we've been talking a lot about integration over the last couple of months, and that's been a huge reset for me. And it's, like I've been around family the last couple of months and different people. And I was like, I actually need to just leave for a while. And I just booked a hotel for a few days and I'm like, I'm just sitting here. I'm just relaxing, just breathing and not doing. And it's so nice.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we get overpeopled, especially when you're on Walkabout. The thing that I remember the most about being on Walkabout was, especially probably 6 to 8 months in, I was in this place of, I'm in everybody else's house. I am singing for my supper every night because everybody wants to know about the journey. They all want to hear the same damn thing over and over and over again. They're all like, okay, so what are you doing? Da, 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 da. That's actually where my program started, was I was so tired of talking about why I was on the journey and how I got here and what was going on, that I actually sat down at one person's house because thank God she was in nursing school at the time. And I had long periods of time alone in her house. And I sat down and I spent 3 days and 45 pages came out of me in 3 days of the stuff that I had been telling everybody when I stopped for the journey. And that way I didn't have to tell it again. But it was also the start of what I was working on as a book and eventually became my coaching programs, because I got sick of telling people. I was like, oh my God, I can't say this one more time, right? And so
What would you say? You felt your nervous system was unregulated during that year, being in those many different energies. It's almost like bilocating to the 10th degree, feels like, because you don't know where you're going. You're in for me, that's what it felt like.
So I feel like I regulated my nervous system to a certain extent before I left, right? The first month I was still in my house, but I was really starting the process of Walkabout. And I had given up my job and I just wasn't ready to leave yet. But I remember sitting on the couch And every 10 to 20 to 30 seconds, I would be like, I should be, I should be, I should be, I should be. And it took about a month for that I should be to go away. And that was regulation number one, right? It's getting out of do it mode, right? And thinking I should be doing something other than what I was doing. And so I think in a lot of ways, Walkabout was good for that because it took me out of my roles and my doingness and just put me in my beingness state, which was super helpful, right? And then, but I don't think it ever really took me physiologically out of the fight or flight, right? That didn't actually happen until I was here in Panama because I didn't realize that I was still in that state, right? And then I did a session with a woman here, and she's not here anymore, but who was here, and she walked me through a vagus nerve reset, a nervous system reset, and oh my God, my stress levels dropped through the floor. I was like a new woman. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not in desperation panic mode all the time, which I hadn't realized I was in, right? I thought I was fine because it was default for me for my whole freaking life, right? But the moment it was gone, I was like, oh my God, this was possible. I did not know. And so, of course, I immediately put it into the program so that people could
Do,
have
do,
that experience. But yeah,
do you
the
think
nerve.
that kind of nervous system operating system is very common in, like in the United States, especially as opposed to other places? And that's why you felt so much different when you hit that energy of tranquilo?
Um, well, the energy here is objectively calming, right?
It's ridiculous. I'm like coming down there, it was just like, I I don't know, I just felt like I needed a sombrero and a tree, and I was just gonna
Oh,
hang
me
out
too.
under it. I was like, this is life now, like, there's nothing to do.
Yeah. It's just like, just calm, right? Um, but I would say that the people in the US as opposed to like Europe, and I'm not going to talk Latin American countries not as much, and Latin American culture in the US before all this crap went down, right? Um, I would say not as much, but in white American culture, there is a huge hustle culture. I mean, US culture is hustle culture anyway, right? But your value is based on what you produce. And therefore, culture is ingrained into you that if you're not doing something, you're worthless, right? And that is very much an American cultural construct that does not exist in other countries. Not, not, I would say, now I've never been to Japan, but based on what I've heard about Japan, I think it does exist there and possibly in China too, from my understandings of Chinese culture. But not in any of the other cultures that I've heard about. Right now, I haven't lived everywhere, I haven't been everywhere, so please, don't come for me, right? But it is very much an American culture thing for us, and that's one of the things that I really noticed when I moved down here is that hustle culture isn't down here, but it creates nervous system dysregulation, the hustle culture, right? And this idea that we have to do to be valuable. And so the nervous system reset is super important for that reason because you don't realize it, but you're super stressed. And maybe you realize it, right? I mean, so let me just say this. The energy in the US sucks. And I talked to Kathy yesterday and she's like, "Yeah, it's worse than ever." And I had to leave in 2022 because it was way too bad for me. I couldn't be there anymore, right? But I had a thought, right? So let's talk about it from an energetic level because nervous system reset is a somatic process, meaning it sits with you in your body, and the nervous system regulation is a bodily function, right? It's functioning based on your vagus nerve. But it's also an energetic process because if your energy field is feeling invaded, then you're going to have a nervous system dysregulation because you're feeling invaded, right? So it's a combination of, and it's a mental process too, because if you're giving yourself stories in your head about how horrible life is and things like that, you will dysregulate your nervous system. If your perception of the world is that it's a dangerous place and nobody's safe, it's going to dysregulate your nervous system. So it's really integrated, right? So these are the things that pull in for the nervous system regulation stuff. And so when you're looking at regulating your nervous system, you have to look at all three parts. Right? And so I want to start with the energy part to begin with, because that's the one that I didn't figure out while I was there. I was too under attack to register and to figure it out. And I just gave this to Kathy yesterday because she's feeling it today, or she was feeling it. And so, you can protect your home. And I did that when I lived there. And you can also tune your wards, your protections. Wards are protections. And you can tune them to, filter out the general angst and unhappiness, right? And I did that too. But there's a point at which you can only filter out so much. When the dominant energy is overwhelming, even with filtering, your wards are going to be challenged. And so what happens is you have to find a way to clean the energy. And this is the part that I didn't get before I left. And so I gave this to Kathy yesterday because, all of the things. And so the idea is that you can put a vortex underneath your house that will cleanse the energy in your wards to help the wards clear the dominant energy, right? Because you want to set a boundary between you and the outside world, because damn, the outside world is kind of screwed right now, right? And so if you set a vortex underneath your house to clean the energy, specifically to clean the energy, be very careful to really make sure it's the right thing, and that it's outgoing only, not incoming, and that it's, make sure you set your intentions properly, that it just cleanses your energy field, right? The energy field of your wards. So that it's constantly filtering that out and grounding it down and taking it, out. And I would be kind to the earth and not send it to the earth, and instead send it to a transmutation station, right? Or maybe you can, that would be fun. I'm just coming up with this right now. That would be fun. You could set it up so that it goes through a little transmutation process. And so it transmutes all the negative energy and pulls all the negativity out of it. And then it feeds the energy back into the house and gives you yumminess. Okay. But you may have to tune it because there's a lot of negative energy. So there's a lot of transmutation that would happen. So if you can't sleep when you do that, because that's possible, then you may want to filter the energy to only dump in during the day. Right. So just, be aware. These are things, unintended consequences. We talk about this in magic, right? It's like, oh, this would be good. And then you're like, oh, shit, I can't sleep, right? So that's one of the ways to deal with the energy that's permeating your environment. Because, especially with all the stuff going on right now, the sense of unsafe is huge, right? So that's important if you want to regulate your nervous system. And so secondly, when we talk about the nervous system itself, you can do the vagus nerve reset. And I'm not going to go deep into detail on that, because you can Google it and find all sorts of references and videos and stuff like that. But I will give you a general idea. The idea is your vagus nerve comes down from your neck. And if it is tightened up and freaked out, then it puts you into your nervous system instead of your parasympathetic nervous system. And it makes you feel stressed, right? And so, yeah, you just did the head turning. So the short and simple pathway is, to turn your head as far as it can go to one side, look behind you with your eyes as far as they go, and wait for your body to give you a response. So usually it's like a deep breath or something like that lets you know. You'll feel the relaxation hit. And then you do the other side, same way. Look as far as you can to the left, look over your shoulder. Be with yourself, wait for your body to respond. It'll give you a deep breath or a relaxing. Yeah, I just got the relax. And, then come back to center. Now, you can also add other pieces to it, and there's ways to do it. But the idea is to slow down. You cannot do a nervous system reset if you're in do it mode. Okay, you have to be in a embodied state because your nervous system is in your body, right? So you need to be present to the process. And that means not thinking about something else while you're doing it. Means you're only in the process. You're only aware of what's going on in your body. You're only aware of that. And then that way it helps you to talk to your body and let it know it's okay to release, right?
Yep. It's interesting. Hey, I've, you know me, I've been on high alert for many years. And, like I was well aware of the cortisol dumps. I became aware of what that felt like more and more, the farther I got on the path and, you know, worked in the body more. And, so I'm getting called to share this because it was something that a few weeks ago, I started a new discipline on integration. I just wanted to, I knew I needed a new morning routine, like instead of getting up and, even on integration, I'm like checking my phone, making sure all my clients are okay. But that was always the first thing, right? Like I opened up with that and I wanted to start a new discipline. So, for me, I landed on the Isha Kriya out of, the Hindu culture, which is, I sat in, Gyan Mudra for 7 minutes each morning. And I just said, I am not the mind. I am not even the body. And for whatever reason, 2 weeks later now, I've had so many triggers that you would have used to just, I would be like in my normal state. And I'm just like, meh, you know, it just doesn't seem as potent or as powerful as it used to be. And, another thing, like I was talking to my cousin who's the therapist about this, and she said, because she comes out of the Jungian school of thought and philosophy and psychology as well. And her theory is that the vagus nerve is actually much deeper than the subconscious, in the sense that, it gets ingrained in there more. And it's almost like that's the next layer of the work. So I think it's real fitting that we're talking about this today.
Yeah. So, the getting somatically relaxed is super important, right? And that's what a vagus nerve reset is supposed to do for you. It's designed to do for you. It will do for you. Um, and that's super important because your body needs to know it doesn't need to be dumping adrenaline and cortisol into your system all the time, right? And those things do horrible things to your body. I mean, stress can take decades off your life. So it's super important to give your body time to recover, right? And so there's that. So we've talked about the physical and we've talked about the energetic. Let's talk about the mental, right? So I am not my mind.
I am not the body. I am not even the mind.
Yeah. And so, to remind yourself that you are God and God is you, or you are the universe and the universe is you, or you are deity, or you are all that is, or however you want to say it, because it doesn't matter how you say it, it's true, right? Um, to remind yourself that you are an all knowing, all powerful being who's pretending to be a human, right? To remind yourself of that, it's like, oh, this is my virtual reality game, right? And to be able to do that. And so, this state of beingness, and the other reason why gratitude is so powerful for people is because it is a reminder to yourself that you are okay, right? It's hey, look, I've got all this good stuff. Hey, it's not catastrophic, right? Even if something catastrophic happens, there are still good things in my life, right? There are still things that I appreciate. There's still beauty in the world, right? And to be able to stay in that state raises your vibration, takes you out of victimhood, which is so, we've talked about victimhood in the past, but victimhood creates nervous system dysregulation, right? So it's one of those things that is super important to be able to step out of consciously on a regular basis, right? And that's one of the things that we work on so much. Like that's it is the primary thing, I think, that we work on in all of the programs that I run, at least the first 3, right? Um, and, the whole Woo series is all about being able to see the world differently, to be able to understand and process things, to be able to remove the triggers so that you're not sitting in victim state. You cannot find inner peace when you're in victim. Those are mutually exclusive, right? And so when you are looking for a nervous system reset, most people are like, vagus nerve. I'm like, it is far more complicated than that. And so you really do have to look at mental, emotional, and energetic. All 3 if you want to regulate your system on a regular basis. And this is the difference between personal growth and transformation, right? Is personal growth gives you skill sets. Transformation changes the way you see yourself and the world around you. You become someone else. And when you do that, you change your experience. And when you change your experience, now you don't have to reset your biggest nerve all the time because you're not constantly perceiving the world as dangerous, either mentally, emotionally, or energetically. Or mentally, emotionally, energetically, or physically. Yes. So emotional, mental go together. And so how do we change the way we see the world? Right? And that's about changing your perspective. I've often said that when we grow up in traumatic environments or we've gone through traumatic environments, that we see the world as though we're laying on the ground with our head turned sideways and somebody's boot on our head, right? So we see the world from ground level sideways. And then people say, oh, go here or go there. And we take instructions the wrong way, because we're not standing up like everybody else. And so they're giving instructions for standing up and we're laying down on the ground with our head sideways with an imaginary boot on our head. That used to be real, but isn't anymore, right? And so now, the goal is to get up off the ground. You got to get up off the ground and you got to start seeing the world from an upright position in standing in your power, right? And that's really what our programs are designed to do, is help you do that. And, you're all be like, well, tell me how. It's like, well, okay, except that it takes 2 years for me to get the information across to you in my courses, which are accelerated from the 25 years it took me to learn it. So I'm not going to be able to hand you all of it in a podcast, okay? But what I'm going to say is the key is to change your perception, right? So I had a client the other day, and we were talking about how her environment around her feels icky, right? And that there's this person who is clearly mentally not right. And, potentially borderline personality disorder, but just like sees things very differently than other people, like perceives things in their own story. Their story is one thing and reality is something else. And they're coming for her. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, I'm trying to figure out what I did to trigger this. And I'm like, nothing. You did nothing. This is your victim self, which is used to being blamed for everything. Asking, how can I blame myself? Because this is my comfort zone. And the fact is, this person is mentally not right. If it wasn't you, it would be somebody else. It has nothing to do with you except that you were present and your energy field said, I'm used to a victim state, so please pick on me, right? And so when you change your energy state, they will wander off, right? And so I'm like, you need to get out of victim. You need to stand clearly on, in a space where you're like, I don't do drama. And, uninvest from this person and uninvest from them having power. Because she's like, oh, they're going to get me evicted, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no. I'm like, anybody who talks to them for more than like 10, 15 minutes is going to realize that they're mentally not right. And therefore, they're not going to believe what they say, right? So stop worrying, right? And so, that's the sort of thing that happens when we get involved in our victim state. We end up creating more of a sense of victimness. This woman is living rent-free in their head, right? And so it's like, evict her from your brain. and just be like, walk away from the crazy, right? We do not engage with the crazy, right? Because you cannot fix it. So don't try. You are not a therapist. It is not your job. They did not hire you. Walk away.
Yeah, this has been one of my major, well, that's been one of my major things. Yeah. Like where, like you always say, like where attention goes, energy flows.
Mhm.
And I was the master of feeding shit stories, like grandiose stories, like just a lot of things that didn't need to happen. I continued to feed energy towards it. Recently, one of the practices I've been doing is I just started, and this came at the tail end of shadow work and just like kind of, like it's almost like vacuuming out the rest of that shit. Right. And I was like, okay, like I told you, I ended up in this place that had like all things that would trigger me, like all in this short amount of time. And I'm like, I don't care. 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 But I was like, why do they keep showing up? So I decided to like create this door. And I just put things, I walked them right out that door and I said, this no longer has power over me. But could I have done that without all of the excavating before that? No, no, because I had to learn to step into my power to get there first. Because if I would have seen all of those, I would have been like, I'm under 8 fucking attacks, right? Like, because that's what it felt like for my dysregulated nervous system for so many years.
Yeah.
Like everything that was, just a little thing felt like a huge thing because all of those years on edge. And it wasn't until I found that state of calm, that state of peace, that sovereignty, really, like the energetic sovereignty, could I be like, okay, there's still some little pieces here that are showing up in my external reality. This trigger is a gift. Finally, it's a fucking gift. Because I didn't fucking believe it for the first 2.5 years. It told me, I was like, stupid. I don't like none of that shit. It feels like a fucking gift. It was the crappiest gift ever. But it was a gift because it's what gets you to the root of that. So,
Yeah.
that's one of the practices I've been using.
Yeah, it's funny because there were a number of times where you were like, I'm under attack. And I'm like, not seeing that. And you were like, no, I'm under attack. And I'm like, not seeing it on the energetic. It's not there. And you're like, but. And so, now you see what that was, right? And
Absolutely.
recognize the adrenaline rush can feel like you're under attack. The cortisol can feel like you're under attack. And it can be triggered by your triggers. And, you get triggered and you feel under attack, but it's not actually an attack. It's just you being triggered, right? And so, this is not uncommon for people to go through this space where they're like, this is going on because you interpret it in a way that is conducive with your current identity, right? And
and for me, it was the first 16 years of childhood. I mean, 17, 18 years of my life, right? Like that. So everything that was ingrained is everything that we unwound over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Like 5 years of working with you, 2 years in the programs, and a lot of this type of work.
Yeah. So, there's a whole process that you go through to unwind this stuff. But, it's a mental game that you do. Not a game, but it's a mental process, right? That you walk yourself through to shift your identity, to shift your perceptions, to shift the way that you see the world and yourself, right? And that's how you have transformation as opposed to simply personal growth, right? And so, all of that. And when we are in a space of shifting those realities and shifting that belief structure, then we can move forward in a less stressed, more regulated fashion because we're not constantly feeling like things are whacking us in the face, right? And I want to go back to the physical stuff for a minute because I'm drinking my second cup of coffee and my heart's starting to go boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, oh, right, I shouldn't have done that. It's a monster cup of coffee and I really shouldn't have had two. And so that's the other thing is caffeine, right? So, the coffee here is so good and they don't make it decaf. You can't get a decaf. And so I'm just like, yummy, yummy. I want another cup of coffee. And then I go, so here's the thing, right? If you're going to have coffee in the morning and you're working towards certain nervous system regulation, what you need to do is you need to eat first, wait 90 minutes, and then have your coffee. Because if you put your coffee on an empty stomach, you're going to spike your cortisol, you're going to spike your adrenaline, you're going to spike your heart rate, and it's not going to be good. But if you eat first and then 90 minutes later you have your coffee, then the caffeine doesn't hit your system as hard. So just be aware that if you're doing nervous system regulation, reducing or even eliminating caffeine is a really good idea. And if you don't want to or you can't, then timing it better is a better choice. And that way it helps your body. Because if you're not doing that, then your body's going to go, my heart is racing, therefore I must be under attack, right? And that's the sort of thing that you want to pay attention to. So I'm going to stop drinking my coffee now. My husband will be so happy because I'll hand it to him and he'll be like, I got it. Yeah. So, nervous system regulation is no joke, and it's not simple. It is complicated. And by the way, going back to the energetics, boundaries for empaths. Step 1 in nervous system regulation. So if you haven't gone onto the homepage of kellesparta.com and gotten your free course for boundaries for empaths, look for the lady with the crystal in her hands. That's the boundaries for empaths link. And it will take you to a free online course that will teach you how to change the way you hold your energy field so that you don't end up with other people inside your energy field all the time, which is one of the main reasons why empaths feel under attack all the time, is because other people are inside our field, which feels very attacky, right? And so when you can learn to change that, that's a huge shift. I mean, a lot of people have such profound changes in their lives simply from doing that one process. And by the way, if you're going to sign up for it, please actually do the work. Don't just sign up for it and say, I'm going to come back to it later. Make yourself a deal that if you go and sign up for it, you're going to do it immediately. Because if you don't, you'll be like 90% of the people out there. I can't tell you how many people are in the system who have signed up and have never opened it. Okay. It does not help you if you don't open it. You have to open it to make it worthwhile. Okay. So it does not take that much time. Okay. There is a coaching call in there that's a recording that's like 40 minutes. You do not have to listen to that in order to do the process. You only need to follow the instructions. And it's like a 5-10 minutes to get through the whole thing. So please don't look at it and go, oh, that's too much. Okay. You can always come back and listen to the coaching call later, but learn the process in order to help you with this nervous system regulation. It's so important as an energy process to help you with your regulation, because if you're not doing this, it's going to be very difficult for you to find nervous system regulation, because you're going to feel invaded all the time, because that's true energetically. And so, really, really, really do that. So go to kellesparta.com, click on the lady with the crystals in her hands and get the Boundaries for Empaths program, and then actually do it. Okay. And then write to me at Kelle@kellesparta.com and tell me how it went, because I want to hear from you guys and hear how that process has worked for you, because everybody I talk to says it's amazing. Okay. And, even if it didn't do anything for you, please write to me. Say, oh, this didn't work, because the likelihood is that there's something about the process you didn't understand if it didn't work for you. And so I want to clarify that for you. So yeah. Right. And so by all means, write in and tell me what your experience is. Yeah. Josh, did you want to add something?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. You unmuted, so I wasn't sure. Okay.
I had a bunch of coffee this morning, and I'm going to up to. I usually don't drink coffee when I was tired. Like, I've been getting up at like 2 a.m. for a while. So
yeah, I was up at 4, so I understand. I don't know why, but my dog's been getting me up between 4 and 5 every morning. So that's unusual for him. So anyway, the upshot is that, you want to make sure, if you're looking to do a nervous system reset, you want to make sure that you're doing all of these different areas, right? And if you are having emotional dysregulation, you will have nervous system dysregulation, right? And so, learning how to manage your emotions, learning how to process them and not shove them down and stuff them. Big difference, right? Because after stuffing for a certain period of time, there's no room left to stuff more. and it will all come running out at you if you don't start to learn to process it. So this is where mental breakdowns come from, is from stuffing the emotions and then having a dysregulating experience, and then it cracks the brain and your brain just goes and break down and fall down, right?
Maybe I should write that guide to spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
It's not that funny, but that's the sacred cloud in me.
I know. Yeah, let's not do that. No. So yeah. I'm gonna ask you guys a favor. If you are listening to this on a podcast, would you please go over to YouTube and subscribe on YouTube? We're trying to get people. This is how podcast gets noticed now, is through YouTube. People find us on YouTube and then they come to a podcast player. And we're trying to get more people to notice us on YouTube. So if you can go and subscribe to YouTube, whether you watch it or not there, I don't care. You know, don't even have to turn on the notifications if you're listening on a podcast on a podcast player. But it would help us a whole lot if you would go and subscribe on YouTube, because that's where we get found as a podcast. So thank you for that. And I hope this episode was helpful for you and that your nervous system regulation goes well. And if you need some help on the identity shifting, the perspective shifting, come and see us at the Welcome to the Woo program. You can find out more about it at kellesparta.com. And remember that what you focus on expands, what you intend is what you create. So choose wisely.